Hi, and welcome to our tax receipting webinar for the CanadaHelps Donor Management System. Perhaps this is your first donor management system, and you've been writing tax receipts by hand or through a word processing tool. Or maybe you've been using another system where tax receipting hasn't exactly been straightforward. No matter the case, we're excited to show you just how easy it is to issue personalized, branded tax receipts with the click of a button using the CanadaHelps DMS. Let's check it out. But before we get started, just a quick note about the difference between the tax receipts that your charity can issue through the donor management system and the ones that are issued for you through CanadaHelps.org. As a reminder, for any donations coming through your CanadaHelps profile page, a CanadaHelps custom donation form, a peer-to-peer campaign, donations of securities, or donations of cryptocurrency, CanadaHelps is the legal issuing party for any and all tax receipts. In other words, these tax receipts bear the CanadaHelps logo, authorizing signature, and our charity information. And in your DMS, you can easily distinguish which donations have come through CanadaHelps by checking the source column in your contributions tab. As a note, while you can't edit CanadaHelps issued tax receipts, you can, however, resend these receipts through your CanadaHelps charity account, but more on that later. On the other hand, for any offline donations that you manually record in your donor management system, such as cash or checks, donations of credit card or direct debit that you process through the DMS payment processor, or any historical donations that you've migrated during your onboarding and which are still eligible for a receipt, your charity will be the legal issuing party for any and all tax receipts. That is, the tax receipts generated and issued through your DMS will bear your charity's business number, address, logo, and authorizing signature. We'll start by taking a look at how to set up these tax receipts in your donor management system. As part of your onboarding specialist will guide you to configure your DMS tax receipts. But as a reminder, you can configure and easily edit your tax receipts anytime by visiting your administrative settings section in the top right-hand corner of your DMS. Here, under System Settings, click on Receipt Settings. On the next page, simply enter all of the information which will appear in your charity's tax receipts, including your organization's legal name, your mailing address, a contact email address, a phone number, your charitable business number, your charity logo, and upload an image of an authorizing signature. For added customization, under Receipt Prefix, you can even select the first few letters of your receipt numbers. For example, if you'd like your tax receipts to begin with your organization's initials. The DMS will then automatically complete the rest of the receipt number, starting with 8 zeros followed by a 1, and increasing in sequential order from there. Under Email Message, you'll find your charity's DMS from email address auto-populated. As a reminder, your from email address is the donor-facing email address that will display to your recipients when they receive their tax receipts by email. And your onboarding specialist will ask you which email address you'd like to set as this from email address during your kickoff call. Lastly, choose an email address to which you'll receive a copy of each tax receipt for record-keeping purposes. As a reminder, the Canada Revenue Agency requires all charities to keep 2 years' worth of tax receipt records on hand for auditing purposes at all times. Your archive email address is a secure way to keep copies of all original tax receipts backed up and readily available. You can also configure a few other useful components of your charity's DMS tax receipts, including the thank you note that appears at the top of the tax receipt itself. This message will be consistent across all tax receipts issued through your DMS and is a great way to continue personalizing a donor's giving experience with your charity. To modify your tax receipt thank you note, head back to your administrative settings section in the top right-hand corner of your DMS. And this time, under Communications, click on Message Templates. From here, select the System Workflow Messages tab across the top. On the next page, you'll see a list of preset message templates. Beside CDN Tax Receipts Thank You Note, select Edit. On the next screen, you can modify the thank you note subject line and body. This is a great chance to take advantage of merge fields, also known as tokens, to autofill any number of personalizations in your tax receipts thank you note, such as donor first name and donation amount. You can save when ready and come back to this section anytime you'd like to make changes to the thank you note that appears at the top of your tax receipts. Finally, when configuring your DMS tax receipts, you'll also want to make sure to customize the email message that your donors will read when you've chosen email as a delivery method for their receipt. Thanking donors is a crucial part of the donation process, and personalizing their thank you email will also go a long way when stewarding them. When a donor receives a tax receipt from you via email, it'll look something like this. Much like modifying the tax receipt thank you note that we just modified, to modify this tax receipt email message, head to your Administrative Settings section. Once here, under Communication, click on Message Templates once again. On the next page, select again the System Workflow Messages tab across the top. On the next screen, under the CDN Tax Receipts subheadings, you can update both the email message for when you send a tax receipt for a single contribution, as well as the email message that a donor will read when they receive an annual or aggregate tax receipt via email. Let's update the single tax receipt email message first. On this page, you can customize the subject line for these emails, and then under plain text format, you can also update the body of your message. Once again, we always recommend leveraging merge fields to seamlessly give your email message that personalized touch. And remember, your email message should be slightly different when a donor is receiving a single tax receipt, as opposed to when they're receiving a combined tax receipt for a year's worth of contributions. So be sure to keep that in mind when updating both of these messages. On a related note, you can also create custom thank you email templates beyond the tax receipt thank you email that we've just configured. For example, you can create a thank you template for all first-time donors, or one that you'll only send for gifts over a certain amount. You can then access these custom templates when issuing a tax receipt. We'll explore where that is shortly. To learn more about creating these custom thank you email templates, check out our Donor Communications webinar. That said, if you don't create or select any custom thank you email templates when issuing your receipts, the tax receipt thank you email message that we've just configured will be the default email message sent to all donors along with their tax receipts, depending on whether it's a single or annual aggregate tax receipt. Now that you've configured your charity's tax receipt information, updated the thank you note on the receipt itself, and customized your tax receipt thank you email messages, you're ready to start issuing tax receipts through your donor management system. When issuing tax receipts, in some instances, you'll want to issue a receipt for a donation immediately after receiving it and recording it in your DMS. For example, let's say a donor paid your charity a visit and they've dropped off a donation to your charity. To issue this donor an immediate tax receipt, head to your Contributions tab. Here, you'll need to either manually record the contribution if you haven't done so yet. If you need a reminder on how to add a contribution, check out our Getting Started webinar. Or select the contribution if it has already been recorded in your DMS but just hasn't been receipted yet. In both of these cases, once the contribution is recorded in the DMS, you'll notice the receipt number column is empty. As a reminder, the DMS doesn't issue tax receipts automatically for any contribution, but rather requires you to initiate the action. To issue a receipt for this donation, select the contribution amount. Whenever a contribution is eligible for a tax receipt, you'll be brought to a screen with an Issue Tax Receipt button in the top right-hand corner. After selecting Issue Tax Receipt, you'll be brought to the Issue Tax Receipt landing page. Here, we can see the receipt status for this donation is Not Yet Issued. Just below, you can choose whether to mark this contribution as thanked in the DMS upon issuing the receipt. You can do this if you've already thanked your donor, for example, in person during their walk-in visit, or perhaps if you plan on thanking them right away after receiving them. Next, you can choose if you'd like to send your donor a thank you email from one of the custom thank you email templates we mentioned previously. Once again, check out our donor communications webinar to learn how to create these custom thank you email templates for recurring use. Otherwise, as a reminder, if you don't select a custom thank you template, your donor will receive the default tax receipt thank you email, which we previously configured in our administrative settings section. Lastly, decide how you'll be sending the tax receipt to your donor. If you plan on sending your donor their tax receipt via email, the DMS makes it easy to email tax receipts with no email marketing tool required, provided there's an email address on file for the donor. Otherwise, if your donor prefers a physical tax receipt, you can download a PDF copy of the receipt to your computer so you can print it and mail it to your donor instead. And, as a note, if you'll be choosing print as a delivery method and you've chosen a custom thank you template above, the custom thank you template will also download as a PDF to your computer at the same time as a tax receipt. This comes in handy if you'd like to print the custom thank you template and mail it as a thank you letter to your donor along with their receipt. If you'd like to see what the tax receipt will look like before sending it, simply click on the gray Preview button. In a new tab, you can see the receipt in preview mode with all of your charity's configurations: your charity name and mailing address, your charity's logo, the donor's mailing address, the tax receipt thank you note that you previously configured, the gift details, and your charity's authorizing signature. Then, whenever you're ready, simply click on Issue Tax Receipt to send the tax receipt via email or to download a copy of it to your computer for printing. And as a reminder, when issuing a tax receipt, you'll always receive a copy of that receipt to the archive email address that you configured earlier in your receipt settings. While issuing one-off tax receipts immediately has its advantages, in other instances, instead of issuing tax receipts one by one on the spot, you might instead prefer to issue multiple tax receipts at once at your desired cadence, such as on a monthly basis. This can help reduce manual work, especially during busy months of the year, such as during tax time. To issue tax receipts in bulk, simply visit your Contributions tab. Here, from your contributions list, choose as many contributions as you need to tax receipt. If you recall from our Getting Started webinar, you can also use your advanced search for contributions to filter for any offline or non-CanadaHelps contributions that have not already been tax receipted. Once I have my search results, I can select all or a few of these contributions and click on the Actions menu to decide how I'd like to issue these bulk tax receipts. For example, you may want to issue each of these donors a combined receipt. In other words, if John Smith made 5 donations in total, he will receive one tax receipt with all 5 donations listed on the single receipt. Or if you'd like to issue separate receipts to each donor. That is, if John Smith made 5 donations, he'll receive 5 separate tax receipts, one for each contribution he's made. You'll then be brought to a similar Issue Tax Receipt landing page as we saw when issuing a single receipt, but with a few changes. Under Receipt Details, you'll see how many contacts and contributions of the ones we've selected are eligible for a tax receipt. As a reminder, contributions will be ineligible for a receipt if the contact's mailing address is missing from their contact profile, or if you've marked the contribution as ineligible for a tax receipt in the DMS. Don't worry, we'll look at how to mark a contribution as ineligible a little later in this webinar. The thank you settings are similar to those we saw previously, allowing you to mark all of the contributions we'll be issuing a receipt for as thanked, and allowing you to send a custom thank you template immediately as well. Just beneath, the table of users will list each contact and contribution that is eligible for a tax receipt through this action, followed by those ineligible highlighted in gray. Finally, the section at the bottom of your screen will allow you to choose whether to email all tax receipts or to download copies of each receipt for printing purposes. And as a reminder, even if you've chosen email as your delivery method, if any contacts are missing an email address from their contact profile, their tax receipts will automatically download to your computer instead, so you can print them off and mail them to your donors. And don't forget that you can also choose to preview all tax receipts before issuing if you'd like. When you're ready to issue all of these receipts, select Issue Tax Receipts. Finally, if any of your donors prefer to receive a tax receipt only once a year, you can instead easily filter for these contacts and issue one or more annual tax receipts with just one click. And you can reduce the risk of manual error by letting the DMS locate and generate these annual receipts for you. To do so, start off by visiting your Contacts tab. Once here, select as many contacts as required from your contact list. Then, click on Actions, and here, select Issue Annual Tax Receipts. As a reminder, in this case, you'll be sending one or multiple donors a combined tax receipt for all contributions they've made within a specific calendar year. So, in other words, John Smith will receive one tax receipt for all donations he's made in the calendar year 2022, let's say. Once again, you'll be brought to a similar Issue Tax Receipt landing page as when issuing receipts in bulk, except in this case, under Receipt Details, you'll be prompted to choose the calendar year for which you'd like to issue the combined receipt. It will also detail how many tax receipts will be issued and how many contributions are included among them. Proceed to decide your thank you settings and delivery method as we've seen previously, and then either preview your tax receipts or issue them when you're ready. As a note, the DMS will only issue annual tax receipts for those contributions that have not already been tax receipted in the calendar year you've selected, so you don't need to worry about double receipting any contributions. Now that we know how to configure and issue our tax receipts in a few different ways, let's explore some other common tax receipting scenarios. The DMS makes it easy for you to locate original tax receipts for resending or editing purposes. If for any reason you need to resend a donor a copy of their DMS tax receipt, you can do so with the click of a button. As a reminder though, for any donations received directly through CanadaHelps.org, you'll need to resend these tax receipts through your CanadaHelps charity account. Here, visit the Donation Reports tab, and beside the corresponding donation, select the Resend icon to send the donor a copy of their tax receipt to the email address they originally used when making the donation. That said, for any contributions that you've recorded manually in the DMS or which you've processed through the DMS Live Payments feature, to issue a duplicate tax receipt, you'll need to visit your Contributions tab. Here, search for the contribution for which you'd like to resend the receipt and select the contribution amount. On the next page, select Manage Receipt. You can see that this tax receipt has already been issued, but you can access a copy of the tax receipt by simply clicking the Complete button once again. As seen previously, depending on what delivery method we choose, this action will either email the donor a copy of the selected tax receipt or will download a copy of it to your computer for printing purposes. There may also be times where your charity needs to void an already issued tax receipt. For example, if you've made a mistake when recording the contribution manually in your DMS, or if you've chosen to refund the donor's offline contribution. To void a DMS tax receipt, head back into your Contributions tab. Once here, find the contribution for which you'd like to void the tax receipt. Then, click on the donation amount. On the next page, select the Manage Receipt button. When you're ready to void the previously issued tax receipt, simply click on Void Receipt. But be careful, once selected, this action cannot be undone. As you can see, this action changes the receipt status to cancelled. If you'd like to send your donor a copy of their voided tax receipt, you can either email or select Print as the delivery method and click Complete to either email a copy or download a copy of the cancelled tax receipt. You'll notice it now shows a cancelled watermark across it. As a reminder, the Canada Revenue Agency requires that you keep a copy of all voided tax receipts for as long as your charity is in operation. Lastly, after voiding a tax receipt, you must make sure to manually change the corresponding contribution status to cancelled. To do this, from the same Manage Receipt landing page, simply click on the contribution amount for the contribution whose tax receipt we just voided. On the next screen, select Edit. Then, under Contribution Status, simply select the drop-down option Cancelled. For your charity's records, you may also want to add a cancellation date and a cancellation region. Then click Save. Now we've made sure to not only void the tax receipt, but we've also ensured that the corresponding contribution has been marked as cancelled in our DMS as well. As a note, any contributions with a cancelled status will be automatically filtered from your DMS reports. Once you voided a tax receipt and changed the original contribution status to cancelled, the contribution and corresponding receipt are considered cancelled in the DMS. Next, if you had previously voided the receipt due to an error in the contribution, you can proceed to issue a new, corrected tax receipt. But first, don't forget to re-record the cancelled contribution in your DMS. To do so, head into your Contributions tab and select Add a Contribution. If you've watched our Getting Started webinar, you'll recognize this screen as a Contributions Details screen. Proceed to fill out all of the correct donation details and save this new contribution in your DMS. Once recorded, you can go ahead and issue a tax receipt for this newly added correct contribution following the steps outlined previously for sending a single receipt. And don't worry, your DMS won't double count your previously cancelled and newly added contribution, because any contributions with a cancelled status will be automatically filtered from all of your DMS reports. Finally, if you ever need to exclude one or more contributions from receiving a tax receipt, for example, if the donor will receive an advantage with their donation and that advantage is over the CRA stipulated amount, or if a donation was tax receipted outside of your DMS already, you can do so by marking the contribution as ineligible for receipting in your DMS. To do so, visit your Contributions tab. Here, search for the contribution you want to render ineligible for tax receipting and click on the contribution amount. On the next screen, select Edit. Once again, and as you'll recall from our Getting Started webinar, you'll be brought to the Contributions Details screen. Once here, scroll down and expand the Contribution Details subsection. You can then check off the Exclude from Tax Receipting box, and if needed, fill out any other relevant details as to why this contribution is ineligible for a tax receipt. Back on this Contributions Details page, you'll now notice a grayed out button where the Issue Tax Receipt button usually is, letting us know that this contribution is not eligible for a tax receipt. This concludes our tax receipting webinar for the CanadaHelps Donor Management System. We hope it's helped you make tax receipting a breeze by showing you just how easy it is to configure, issue, resend, and edit tax receipts for all non-CanadaHelps donations using your DMS. Check out the other helpful webinars in our series, including our webinars on getting started and donor communications using the CanadaHelps donor management system.